Oh yeah, hello everyone. We are back for another interview, this time with Produced by Dav. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. A little, well, I guess I'm okay, because I found out I was saying your name wrong for the past, 6 months here. I've been saying Produced by Dave with no E, everyone, so sorry about that, but we corrected it.
All good, all good. That happens.
Yeah, so this week, tomorrow actually, Thursday, you're going to be on IRL Alpha. We're going to talk all things music, so I thought we would just dive a little bit into your music background, find out who you are, and I don't know, kind of what spicy takes you have so we know what to fight with you about tomorrow. So
I'm sure there'll be plenty of contention points.
Oh yeah, so music we always fight about. So maybe just to start off here, want to tell us, like, I don't know, how'd you get involved in music?
Oh geez. Okay. Well, I came up as a bass player as a kid, playing in bands. Moved down here like 2006, playing a lot of indie bands, wanting to be a studio musician, kind of mostly, and yeah, played in a lot of bands for a while. Did some touring stuff. Did a lot of studio work, and then one of those bands got a pub deal. And yeah, started doing some more like pop-focused stuff, producing artists and stuff like that.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, and then got into Web3 kind of after.
Wait, what made you want to be a studio musician? That's like the most brutal lifestyle ever, okay? You have to be like the best musician ever. You have to work the fastest. It's like brutal.
Yeah, and no credit for it.
Yeah, no one knows that you're, yeah, all the work.
Yeah, and none of the glory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know why. It sounded good at the time for some reason, but yeah, it can be a little thankless, but I tend to prefer being behind the camera as opposed to in front of it, so that kind of lends itself that way.
That's good. We put you on camera today. Exactly.
Right. Yeah,
you are called Produced by Dav, so
right.
I get, like, produced by. Okay, so maybe how'd you get into the Web3 then?
I got into Web3 in 2021. Yeah, right around the time everything was starting to rip, and initially just like Twitter Spaces. I think Ed Balloon's Genesis Space was one of the first things I kind of happened across, and just like super good vibes and people, being able to find an actual digital original for digital works, I think was a huge kind of like the step function upgrade for me. Yeah, that was 2021. Then getting into, discovering some music NFTs there, like what Latasha was doing, or Black Dave and Blau. And then my first minting thing, I was trying to find a dev to make a degrading version of a song that I wanted to do that was called 99 Cents. And I couldn't find a dev for it because it was the middle of the bull, everything was ripping, and no one would respond to DMs. So I ended up learning some Solidity and making that myself after like maybe 6 weeks of doing some coding stuff, and that basically goes through like a tape machine every transfer. So there's a bunch of additions, and then every time those additions trade, they they kind of disintegrate over time.
Nice. So. I was gonna say, it sounds like it's actually one of my favorite pieces of work of all time, Def Thief Entropy.
Oh yeah, amazing.
That's one of the first pieces that I saw where I was like, oh my god, he's using the blockchain for the art. It's amazing.
Yeah. Actually, as a medium itself. Yeah.
The tape machine is like, I think, a great analogy to anyone who like buys vinyl records or tapes knows that it's like, I actually just bought a record the other day. I popped it on. I was like, did I get ripped off? This thing is pretty scratchy. I'm like, it's the character. It's the character. So
totally.
Yeah.
Like actual, some finite. I mean, the kind of theme at the time with everything was like, oh, everything's immutable. Everything lasts forever. So it was like, okay, let's find a way that we can kind of mess this stuff up and see, how it can be more fragile.
Yeah. So wait, so you just hopped into Solidity. Had you done other dev work before?
I had poked around on like some Visual Basic stuff as a kid, but I kind of took a long hiatus coding. But I do like it a lot. And it came fairly quick, but it was a lot of this is pre-ChatGPT, it was a lot of chasing down articles, and of course, like, it's not like there was tons of resources available on Solidity at the time. So it was a lot of Well,
good. You're pushing my agenda of I'm trying to trick every musician. If they're a musician, I'm like, you can be a dev. The skills transfer, in my personal opinion. So.
Especially now, like, it's easier than ever.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, even though I don't know, it might be dangerous. Okay, we're gonna have a lot of contracts come out that might have GPT bugs in them. So yeah. So it's funny. You mentioned a couple people who first got you interested into the music. Were you seeing anything you're like, oh, I like the model they're doing, or were you just like, that's a musician in his wacky world, let me follow him?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it was kind of the optimism of the space. I'm definitely like a really hardcore optimist in general, and seeing that kind of vision for how things could be with with this new technology, you know, artists actually getting paid. Obviously, the music industry has a lot of issues and a lot of problems.
A couple.
Compensating people. And so this did feel like, you know, a bit of an exit strategy, I think, for musicians in general. It's just like a creative option. And, you know, seeing a lot of streaming stuff fall over the years, obviously like the huge hit that Napster doled to the industry, and then streaming having a little bit of a boost, and then now with the labels buying that, it's like everything is kind of down only again on the creative side. So seeing this feels like a really promising thing. So the optimism was a big piece. There was definitely some people making some great music, but it's a small pond as far as the amount of people that are here, the like amount of creativity that's here. So it's still compared to the entire music industry, you know, the creativity is limited in some ways, but there's some really inspiring people doing some really, great things, of course.
Totally. So it sounds like a lot of it was you already in the traditional music industry, right? Pub deal, touring, studio musician, and then, okay, wow, this world might help us, maybe get paid more, escape that world.
Yeah.
However, like with your new release, you are embracing not even just like Web3, you're embracing generative music, which is like a pretty big thing in this Web3 world. Not really the biggest thing in the music world at all. Like, so, when did you go from, when did you get into generative music, I guess, is a good question.
Well, generative was probably the fourth kind of step function upgrade, kind of the paradigm shift of the space. The first was digital objects, NFTs in general. Then blockchain as a medium with, like the 99 cents thing, or like what Def Beef was doing, and like what... there's a handful of people working with it, but it's a small space with that still. Direct, Solidity as a medium. And then CCO was a big jump after that of like, actually we can all put things here, and then we can all use each other's things, and we have this like modular ecosystem of this kind of sandbox to work in. And then the last one was the generative thing, where it's like, now I can write an algorithm that makes many things instead of just having to do everything and make additions of each one. Because a lot of music is based on additions right now, which is great in some ways. It's cool for people to kind of coalesce around specific works, but it also, the one of X thing is its own special thing, and you have that with PFPs where you can get, attached to them and feel like it's more personal by having your own actual piece. But in music, that hasn't been much of a thing. And when it has been, it's been a little bit more experimental, a little bit more like, modular synth, or a little bit on the bleep bloopier side of stuff, which I think is dope. I've got a mod, I love doing that stuff. But they're, myself kind of coming from the song world, I'm trying to make stuff that either can be turned into a song, or maybe inspires some, has some song potential at least.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of been my angle on generative stuff. And the particles thing, Prohibition started this Arbitrum-based open generative platform. And so I was able to be one of the original artists on there with this thing called Infinite Branches, which is like, it's the heart of that is a generative algorithm that kind of makes chord progressions. Mm-hmm. And then there's some melodic elements there, but really kind of the heart of the algorithm is kind of finding new chord progressions generatively. And then this Particles launch, there's only 64 of the Infinite Branches things, but Particles is about just kind of like this kind of explosion of things where it's like each one is only $1, but there's going to be like 30,000 of them.
Totally.
And they're all like based on this kind of arpeggio, kind of like 8x8 grid of 64 notes. And there's obviously a lot of combinations that can be, and a lot of sounds and stuff like that. So that was kind of about just like, how wide can it go? I'm really excited about the generative stuff. That's all code-based, like all on-chain kind of code. But there's also tons of potential for like audio recordings to be, like with some Arweave or other off-chain kind of immutable off-chain options. To kind of generatively cut that stuff up or generatively merge things. Like there's a whole design space there that's super
you could take your project and someone can make another project that interacts with it, right?
Exactly.
Which is, we're seeing that more in the generative space right now with like a lot of people like, Snowfroze Squiggle algorithm was adopted by Jack Butcher and reused to make more art. And
totally.
Yeah. So you mentioned two things. So we did skip a thing in the step function, which is CC0,
yes.
right? Which is, oh boy, like I tell you, you talk about musicians about CC0 and it like divides the room right in two.
Yeah,
so
that's
where do you stand?
Attention point. I'm a CCO maxi for sure. I didn't think I was that kind of like hardline, principled on certain of these things, but CCO is one of those things where once you kind of take on board the idea that things that can be used can then proliferate and become, you kind of get more eyeballs on things from their usage. And now that we have tokens, which can kind of capture value and build up more demand, you kind of don't unlearn that idea. Once you kind of realize that, like, the more useful these things are, the more culturally relevant they are, the, kind of number go up, everybody wins. There's a positive sum element to that if I close off the IP and only I can use it, then no one else gets to actually make use of the thing or reinterpret it or remix and create new works that can add value to that thing.
Totally. It's crazy how someone samples your piece and all of a sudden you might be going crazy, right? And then if you want to block everyone, no, don't release that. You need to pay me first. It's like they might not be able to afford to pay you at all. And I want people to get paid, but it's a tough balance because, I think remix culture is one of the most amazing things for proliferating your own art and seeing how people interpret it. So.
Definitely, and the more shots on goal you have, if you have one person remix it, it may or may not catch, it may or may not be great. But if there's thousands of people that are inspired to remix it, why cut them off at the at the heels and not let them make something that could really make everybody win?
Totally. I think was it like Trent Reznor released one of the 9 Inch Nails albums where he's like, here's the stems, go wild, and
that
it's
was the Ghost stuff, and you know what that became?
No, what
the Lil Nas X song, the first one.
No, really? Oh yes, he's got that 9 Inch Nails sample in there. Oh my god, I forgot.
Yeah,
that is wild.
We wouldn't have. What's the name of that song? We wouldn't have
Old Town Road, or what was it called? Yeah, Old Town Road was like 9 Inch Nails. Yeah, crazy. That's
9 Inch Nails flip.
Yeah,
you would never think that's. You would never listen to Ghost or any 9 Inch Nails stuff and go like, oh, you know what? That's actually going to become
the new genre of pop country rap. Mix. Yeah.
But that's the thing is opening up creativity to this thing. It allows these things to branch out in these really exciting and inspiring ways. And so why not open it up? Especially when now there is a way with the tokenization. It's everything should be that.
And we can track where people are using stuff maybe easier. Yeah. So speaking of branching out, because you did mention something kind of crazy, and I'm very interested in it, is your project was based off building out chord progressions?
Yeah.
Okay, so how are you following, what were the rules you were following for that? How are you making sure things sound melodic in some way?
Totally. A lot of Western music is based around some classical music, Roman numeral branching kind of rules in that way. And algorithmically, the way it works is basically, I would say okay, we start with this chord. This chord sounds good going to these 4 other chords. And this chord sounds good going to only these 2 other chords, and so on. Yeah. So I just basically made a matrix of what things,
cool. Nice.
A pile of arrays of what things resolve to, and then it was just a matter of select one from the last. But so those are basically my interpretations or my preferences for where things go, which is interesting though, because when I go back and listen, there's some 8-bar or 8-chord progressions that get created that I would never have made, or I would never have thought of, but it followed my rules that I made. Yeah. So it's there is an interesting line of how much the artist is responsible for the outputs,
totally.
Versus the algorithm. But that's the general gist of it. Is kind of setting up that, and you can get outside of the diatonic stuff by just saying, well, this major 7 can resolve to these other major 7s that are out of the key.
Yeah, are there any, it's actually funny. So I actually did try this on stream a couple of years ago. I was writing exactly the same thing. Amazing. And I was a music theory nerd. Yeah, and so first I just based it off the original rules, right? Which is a 1 chord can go to any chord, a 2 chord, only a 5 and a 7. I would never go anywhere else, right?
Okay, yeah.
But then what becomes interesting is then once you really put those rules in your head, you go, wait, that Beatles song goes from a 2 to a 3? That's not allowed. Oh, it sounds so good.
It's great.
It's were there any rules that you found for yourself? Ooh, I like this progression, but everyone's saying, nah, it's not one.
Oh, totally. I mean,
we want to get nerdy. I want you to say, listen, a minor 7 flat 5 diminished down to.
No, that's great that you know all the lingo, so we can actually get deep on this because a lot of it is diatonic, so it's staying within the key. But there are some interesting ways to get outside of that. So one of them is just major 7s that it's going up a minor third. So it'd be major 7 1 chord, and then a flat 3 major 7, then a 4 major 7 which is still in the key, and then a 7 major 7 or something.
Gotcha.
So the way I had originally gotten to this was when I got into CCO last year, I was making kind of handmade samples that were CCO, and I was like, okay, they started as one-of-ones and then became additions, and it's kind of like a treasury back DAO is kind of the end goal. But it was all handmade. And so I wanted to make a generative project of samples, kind of combining the audio of that. And then when this prohibition thing came up, they wanted things to be all on chain with the code. So I switched that from being audio recording combinations to then being code combinations, and it became. Originally, I was gonna make the chord progressions, make the melodies, like code in on a, like a sequencer essentially. So I did that at first, and then I realized, well, the value of having it be code is I can actually then generate the progressions and like kind of rule based. So that's how I got to this branching algorithm. And but initially, I started with one progression and one melody, and then basically I was finding reharms for that melody. So that's how I got to the weird major 7 stuff.
Nice.
There's some other things that kind of get out of the key, like having 9s that are just in the wrong places, but they resolve from some chromaticism stuff or whatever. Nice. But yeah, finding the places where you can kind of push and pull there is all the gray area stuff is where it gets super interesting. So.
Totally. Yeah, well, it's funny. That's why I always tell people, like, for like generative music, if you look at like Bach right now, the rules were so strict. We can make direct ripoffs that you will not be able to tell it unless you recognize the tunes, because the rules are so strict. And then you start applying it to other artists and you start realizing, whoa, a lot of artists are like this. And it makes me relook at, like, if your music is easy to generate, is it worse or better? I don't even know. Is it a shot against you? Maybe not. It means that you're super strong stylistically, or is it like...
Well, I think there's always a tension between having an identity, even if it's album to album. If you look at like Kanye, for example, if you go from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and project that out through machine learning, you're not going to get Yeezus.
100%.
No matter how
never.
Much,
yeah.
No matter how refined your algorithm is. But he made that world, and then he built out and really stretched the bounds of what it could be within that. And I think there's something artistically there where it's like Yeezus was the same way. Like it's a whole departure, but then within that, it's really stretching out everything that can be done in that world. So I do think more and more artists, especially with the ease of, not that it's super easy to kind of codify your own ideas, but it's easier than it has been between AI stuff and other resources we have now. So I do think more and more artists will find either generative partners or generative ways to kind of, create their version of, a generative version of their art, which I think is exciting.
No, what's going to happen is it's going to be the thing, like, for a while there, every band got a DJ, right? It's every band's going to have, that's our generative dude. He codes for the band. He'll just be on stage, like, with the laptop. Like, that's already kind of a thing a little bit, even though.
The Linkin Park of the 2020s.
Yeah, this is the new Linkin Park. Okay, it worked great for them here. So we did kind of mention a little bit there of, like, AI. Obviously, AI in music is hugely controversial, and Grammys already said that you can have AI in your music and still win a Grammy as long as a human is participating at some reasonable level.
Interesting.
So kind of curious your opinion, as an actual artist, like, using AI already. How do you feel about another artist using AI? Where's the level for you where you're, comfortable?
I mean, in general, I feel like AI is just another tool. The tools are getting smarter, the tools are getting wiser, which is a weird thing to be able to say now. But I think ultimately it is about having a vision and executing on that vision. So I'm all for it. As much as people want to use it, as crazy as it gets, I think, obviously blockchain is going to provide a valuable way to check credibility and for people's reputation to be kind of, more in check with that, which I think is a good thing. But people exploring, any of these AI, whether it's voice AI or like there's an aesthetics thing to AI. Obviously like Midjourney has a look to it, or DALL-E has a look to it sometimes, and that probably fades away a little bit. But a lot of this, like what Refusion is doing, they're like generative music stuff, and what's the Music Gen? Is that the Llamas thing? Some of those things, like. I typed in some random prompts the other day to try and help out a buddy who was asking about a generative jingle or something. And it actually, I think I typed in generative coffee jingle, and it spit out a sample that just sounded cool, like something West Side Gun would jump on or something.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, actually, even if you type in the wrong thing or you're here for the wrong reasons, you can still get some cool things. And it just reminded me that so much of it is the interpretation. It's like
Totally.
if you wanted to go there looking for the coffee jingle, you're going to be bummed out.
Yeah.
But if you go there looking to just try some stuff and maybe like flip that sample,
Totally.
throw some drums on it, throw a verse on it or a hook and, get some other creativity going, like it can be a huge inspiration point,
Totally. Yeah, it's so funny. You see like people who do like the sample flipping competitions, right? And it's like one sample and every beat is radically different, right? It's
Totally.
really, it is all interpretation, so.
Yeah, Headstyle is really good with that too. I don't know if you know them.
Oh, no, I don't.
They put out a sample a month, and that sample gets flipped by everybody, and then they vote for who's going to make the tape, which is like
sick.
10 artists make the tape. And they do basically a tape a month, and
Nice.
Everyone pushes and pulls it in completely wild directions.
That's sick, yeah. I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
So for Web3 stuff, like there's a lot of promises. You said you came in, it's very hopeful here. Like,
yeah.
What's
that was last year.
That's what I'm saying. That was last year. So the question is, what is the stuff that didn't work out in your opinion? Either stuff you think that it's never gonna work, or stuff you're like, we're not there yet.
Well, I do. I mean, in general, I'm an optimist, and I maintain that through even this like kind of prolonged bear market that we're in. I think the most promising thing for me is for people to start to see the light of CCO and to start minting things, opening up the IP for everyone to work with, everyone adding more things to work with, and then having like this open remix ecosystem. And I think that would be, to me, the most inspiring kind of situation to end up in. And I think as more and more people kind of understand NFTs, more and more people start to understand CCO, more and more people start to understand generative and just like the value of these things, I do think that's where the incentives lead. But it is a trudge through the mud kind of getting there.
Yeah,
And, it's a slow uptake, but I think the way... I just made a post about this the other day, actually. I think the way to make use of being early is to be as authentic as you can and make things that are open source for people to work with. So when people do understand it, they come here, they can find some of the stuff that already is here, and hopefully they can find something that they resonate with. Because there needs to be enough here that people can actually...
Totally.
It's such a personal thing, making art or collaborating or flipping, stuff into your own works, and so there needs to be enough here that that people can find something that they resonate with.
Yeah, there's always that tension where a lot of us, like in Web3 music, it's like, yeah, we can token gate our stuff and we can put it behind walls, and you're like, no one's here yet, and you're like, and it's behind a wall, and come over here and look, like pay me to get behind the wall, and it's
come over here and pay me. Yeah, that's generally the vibe, I think.
So have you had arguments with people within Web3? Any musician friends where you just are both like on each other side?
I've had a few flame wars on Twitter, X, or whatever about CCO in general. This one guy was accusing me of trying to psyop artists into releasing their IP so that I could use it somehow or something like that. I love that. Produced by Dav. I see what's going on. He's trying to get free samples. He's sick of paying. Good scheme. Yeah. So that ended up like being a 50 post battle back and forth somehow. But
if you could send me that post, I need to read that. Okay,
we'll
it sounds
put
fun.
A link to it.
Yeah.
No, but there's a lot of in music, because the industry is so tough and because it's so competitive and because there's not much money there, people are very protective of their IP, and a lot of times when people are successful, it's only because of the back end royalties that they're making and stuff like that.
Totally.
So I understand where that mentality comes from, but I think here the complete opposite is true, and there's really things are much more valuable when people can use them. Mm-hmm. So, but it is kind of a hard fought battle at the moment, I think. That's a trick, and what else in the music NFT world is tough? I mean, I mean there's a lot. People, making art is so personal, and it's so we have a lot of intense preferences because it's so personal, and we have a lot of attachment to our own work because it's so personal, and so I think in general, just being gentle with people, but also trying to encourage them to get the best out of their efforts, and it's.
I'm not the best at being gentle with people. That's where I'm on the this sucks. Let's make it better. And everyone's like, you're being mean about my art. I'm like, I want it to be better, but
right.
I feel you
for the right reasons.
For the right reason, yeah,
totally. I mean, we do need more criticism in the space. I think that's important, but. You also need that kind of fuck you attitude to not care about that as well, but you really need both of those things to be really strong.
Totally.
And I think right now there's a little too little of both of those things. There's not enough kind of punk rock, and there's not enough kind of legit informed criticism.
Yeah.
But
we need the Anthony Fantano of Web3 to come in and start reviewing that.
Well, we really need 1,000 Fantanos.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Agree.
The trick is to have it be, there'd be so many platforms, there'd be so many CCO works, there'd be so many albums that anyone can find the pocket of people that they vibe with, and then there's already 40 other people there that they can talk to about it,
Totally, yeah.
The trick is now it's like you finally find something you would work with, and then there's just like one other person that is there, or like it's been closed down because they went back to get a job at Taco Bell or something.
Yeah. No, the bull's back though. Don't worry, they're all going to come back right now. Okay, so we're getting there here. So before we wrap up here, Particles, it's coming out.
It's out.
It's out.
When
did it come out?
Minting now.
Minting now.
Yeah. So
nice.
October 3rd it came out. So it's been out for a couple weeks.
Cool.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that. What's wrong with me? Okay. But hey,
get it together, man.
Yeah, I know. I gotta go mint it. For like any music projects too, I gotta sit down and like really mess with it. So I played with it a little, and I was like, oh. And then that's when I reached out to you. I played with some, and I was like, Trick, you need to see this. And then I was like, okay, let's get you on the show. But I have to sit down. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. And now I got to dive into infinite branches too now that I know it's a chord progression. I didn't realize that. I didn't do my research.
I mean, it's tricky to do all the things. There's a lot going on in the space, even in the bear market. But yeah, the particles are controllable. So the idea with that is it's not just 64 notes and then the bass line that does the branching chord progressions thing. They're actually with key commands and like some mouse control, you can kind of play them in a way that makes them kind of performative, in that even without recording them, people can have different interpretations just right in the piece. So that's kind of to try to just maximize the range of possibilities that they can be, and people can get attached to them maybe in more personal ways and make it their own.
So what we need is has anyone hooked up any sort of MIDI instrument to it yet?
Oh, that's interesting.
That would be really, because you're already on your keyboard, you're already kind of playing it, right? And
totally.
So I wonder how that'd be interesting to
Yeah, it would be possible to add some MIDI controls. There's some wiggle room where you can kind of like adjust the code until it mints out. The art blocks thing is kind of like, I think even after a couple weeks a couple weeks after the mint out, you still have some wiggle room to tweak bugs and whatever. So I was thinking about putting some mobile stuff in there so it's a little easier to play with.
Yeah.
But a MIDI thing is another thing where it's like, you could add some more playability there. And maximizing the controllableness of that is also part of like, what do we do with these mediums that we have now, whether it's like Solidity and changing stuff based on token mechanics, or whether it's like using, JavaScript and minting web pages through the art blocks thing. And, what's the most we can do with that to kind of make it the most personal and say something with the artwork itself,
Totally. I always think MIDI, I'm a MIDI fan, right? Because I just love it. This spec that like unites everyone across instruments all of a sudden, and you could release it and you'll have someone like, I have a MIDI saxophone. I'm playing your piece. I've got a MIDI keyboard. I got a MIDI guitar. And it's like, I want MIDI. I want a MIDI telephone, and then we'll be have everything.
Perfect.
So to wrap up, I guess you already were producing songs here. We'll actually listen to one in a second here. You got generative music in multiple different avenues here. Like, which direction are you exploring the most next? Are you going deeper into generative music? Are you trying to write some hit songs or what?
Well, all of the above, probably in the longer term. In the shorter term, there's a one-of-one generative piece that I'm working on.
Oh, sick.
That's like a generative audio recordings kind of a thing. I've also got like a generative sample recordings thing that'll be, kind of like that first project that I was working on in the space. Maybe at the end of the year or early next year or something like that. So exploring a lot of generative audio and making things that can be that can write to the chain also instead of just reading the chain.
Gotcha. Nice.
So kind of like how Math Castles does. There's like some interaction and some ways that users can really create a thing and like collaborate within the user base.
Totally.
I think doing some stuff on the musical side there, maybe making some kind of a giant piece that holders could actually change the composition of, or anything like that that's modular that can kind of invite other people to work with it. I think is anything that's collaboration, anything that's modular is fair game for me and kind of keeps me.
Okay, you said it twice. I have to ask because you did mention it before. You're in a modular synths too.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Sure. So you're at we call in my friend group we call it's the final hobby of music. You've reached the end. There's no more deeper to go, right? You're like, when did you get into that? I just gotta ask because it's.
Maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
Okay, nice. Do you have any money left? Or is it just all? Sorry.
No. between modular and NFTs, they're just like there doesn't exist money anymore.
Every one of my friends who gets into modular synths, and I got a lot, and like family members too. It's always just like it's bad, man. It's bad. Don't do it. Just.
I mean, it kind of comes in waves too. Like I'm kind of a gearhead with other things, so sometimes it's like grabbing a new keyboard or like a Mellotron thing or whatever. But once it got into modular, you really have to put the brakes on because it's just an infinite money pit.
Yeah, exactly.
And those things are so cool because each one has a function, and I think there's some analogs there with getting into blockchain when certain tokens could control parameters and other ones could control totally, compositions or something like that. Like there's a whole world there that I think is informative, but it's definitely a rabbit hole between the cost of it and also just the time and the potential of what it can do sonically.
Yeah. It's a hobby that I'm avoiding at all costs, and I know that I'm going to lose everything to it. But once the bit bull's fully back, that's when when you start seeing nerds, not Lambos, with modular synth setups, then totally we know we're fully there.
Definitely.
Okay, so maybe to wrap up here, so Dav's going to be on the show tomorrow, this Thursday, IRL Alpha. We're going to debate a bunch more music stuff. You're a CCO fan, so there's some people who aren't going to be that, so we'll definitely be talking about that.
Feathers, I'm sure.
We'll talk some AI and some other stuff here, but maybe to wrap up, we'll just play 99C right here. You want to give a little information about what the song is?
So this is a song I made with Bryce Blanco, who's a rapper on the song, and it's the first song off of a solo album that I'm working on, it's that was the one I mentioned before that does the degenerating thing through the tape machine, and this is the original version that's on Spotify.
Beautiful, awesome. So we're gonna disappear right now. We're gonna listen to this song, and then we'll see you guys tomorrow for IRL Alpha to talk more music stuff. Later.
Fucking that feedback. What did I need that? Sleep on no house, barely got rim. Lot of dark rooms to develop that film. Baby, that soul box really got cleansed. Still get throwed off, admit it. Running by the shoestring, bad tennis. Shit. Running with a wasteland, running in the talk. Only how they finna shape that image. If it ain't clear, this buzz off limits. Tear nigga down in the love y'all give it. Brit look great in the low light in it. Engine on V8, sludge all in it. Nothing that hold me. So much to grab on. So many smoke free. So much to ash on. When you get lonely, what do you latch on? Act on for the platform, will it last long? With the tag on, it was 99 cents. You can get all this right here just for 99 cents. Do not slow down, y'all know the time it fly quick. Looking at the side eye shift, I seen all the highlights. I've been up early trying to find my grip. Head high, freedom ring, in the city, in the eye, air strike, fever dream, yeah bro, feelings die, here you go, dotted line, fin low, dollar sign, bloody punch, in the whip, hemoglobin, Clementine. I was told I was in my prime. Niggas don't know how the wind blow, roll up the window, they do not get my drive. What are my goals, what is in my mind? There they go tryna dim my look. There they go tryna dim my light. Vocals on max, but the value low. Ain't no need to defend my price. To defend my all you want is yours and everything that come with it. Stop in front the store. Nobody know what's under it. All you want is yours and everything that come with it. Stop in front the store. Nobody knows. Is it real?